Hi, welcome to this edition of Chuck's Culture Channel. This time around, I'm talking to playwright Stephen Dietz, whose list of plays is really so long that I won't give them all to you, but you may recognize a few names like Lonely Planet, Private Eyes, and Inventing Van Gogh, plus a couple of plays that have been produced by the West End Players Guild recently here in St. Louis, This Random World and Bloomsday. His play Fiction is going to be on stage at the Gaslight Theater October 7th through 23, 2022. Let's have a little chat about that show. So, here I am in front of virtually the Gaslight Theater, which is where the show is going to take place, the show being Fiction by Stephen Dietz. And here, right next to me, is the playwright himself, Stephen Dietz. Welcome to Chuck's Culture Channel.
Thank you, Chuck. I'm delighted. I'm delighted to join you here in front of the theater. That's
Yeah,
great.
I'm pleased to actually meet you in person, albeit on Zoom, because as I said before we started recording, I'm a big fan of your work.
Thank
Seen it
you.
many times. I think the one I saw most recently, which is a few years ago, was This Random World, which I thought was a terrific piece.
Thank you very much. I'm proud of that little play. Thank you.
So the one you're doing now is one of your older plays. It's you said from around 2000, I think.
2000, 2002, somewhere in there. Yeah,
Okay.
I get confused on my own chronology, but let's say it's somewhere in there.
Somewhere in there. And it's being done, though, for the first time here in St. Louis at the Gaslight Theater, October 7th through 23. So tell us what it's about.
Well, in essence, I got interested in what would happen if a couple writers ended up through various machinations of plot had to share their diaries with one another.
Hmm?
This seemed like a very fraught and terrible idea. But I'd had that notion for a while that a couple, what if a long-term couple and a solid, strong couple in a good marriage, for if I could contrive a reason why they would need to share their diaries with one another. I did contrive that reason. That does happen in fiction. And the other thing that drove it, I think I had written in my little notebooks for years, the notion of as hard as it would be to die with a secret, would it be harder to live with a secret?
Mm.
And so buried in those, the woman Linda Waterman buried in her diaries, her husband Michael Waterman buried in his journals, are obviously secrets that are going to be divulged, and that's obviously how the story of the play is going to come about. But there's a third character named Abby Drake, who they both met at a writers' colony at different points in their past.
Hmm.
And it won't surprise you to know that Abby Drake shows up in both their diaries. And so it's a three-hander. I like to believe there's a lot of humor in it, but it's ultimately a drama, and it's ultimately about how our secrets form us and our secrets test us and test our relationships. And so yeah, it's a play I that kind of snuck up on me in the middle of other projects, and it's had a nice life. But I'm delighted, as you said, that it's found its way to St. Louis.
Yeah. Now, what inspired you to write it? I'm just curious.
Well, I would love to say I disappointed a New York publicist terribly once when I said, who knew that my wife is also a playwright, and this New York City publicist, when the play was done off Broadway, desperately wanted to believe that this was our story.
Oh
And
God, yeah.
when I told her that, in fact, there's no way I don't think I would read my wife's diaries and vice versa, this publicist was horribly disappointed in me. I was interested in the notion of how far we will of how far we will go to maintain our sort of secret life. And
Mm.
I don't mean a secret life of like we're on the side, we're running a crime ring or
Yeah.
something,
Right.
but the level of theater's ultimate strength, I think, is intimacy,
Hmm.
and it's performative intimacy, and it's character intimacy, and proximate intimacy. And the proximate intimacy that I will feel if I walk into the Gaslight Theater is very comparable, I think, to the proximate intimacy of a marriage. And to test that in the telling of secrets. I'm happily married now for 26 years. But to test that in a marriage is something that I thought would be evocative and dynamic, and also, the theater is I think I've taught writing for years and years, and it I just remember my mom, people would be having some difficult conversation out in public
Hmm.
somewhere. My mom would say, get away from there, let those people there talk about it.
Right.
Well, as you know, as a theater artist and follower, and as a teacher writing, the job of the writer is to walk right up to those people and to go into all the rooms that we were told there's something private going on in there. And it's hard to imagine something more private than people's diaries and journals and the lives that we live therein, as opposed to the life we live um, in our day-to-day
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's kind of a cliche. It can be hard to be in an intimate relationship with a writer of fiction because,
I would think so, but the level of invention, I don't know that the level of invention in our lives is solely the province of writers. I don't have a point of comparison because that's all I've been since I was 20
Mhm.
something years old. But I think the invention of self is I'm over my skis to talk about sort of the psychology of this, but I think the invention of self is something that we all understand.
Yeah.
And the people that we are in one room versus the person that we are in a different room. And in both cases, when each of the spouses in this, and then of course I don't want to tell you or your listeners too much. I want to hand this over to the theater that's going to hopefully
Right.
surprise them. In both cases, we're going back to a seminal moment in each of these writers' life that it may drive their partner crazy as their spouse, but they're also going to learn something about their spouse as a writer because they've never known what that their partner went through at that moment.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned something a minute ago that I think is important, that we all are involved in creation, really, in creating ourselves, whether we're in what is considered a creative field or not, right? Uh,
Ab- absolutely.
Yeah. And I think
Absolutely.
we just see more of that in, well, writers or actors. I mean, I can think of it more from an actor standpoint, in that I know when I have performed on stage, I have used things or feelings or even ideas from my past life to help shape a character on stage. Sometimes even imagining one of my fellow actors as maybe a version of someone I once knew,
Sure.
because
Yeah.
it makes my reaction on stage more believable, but it doesn't mean that actor becomes that person. So there is a
No.
line
No.
there.
No, and I think the other part of me is that we this is self-evident, Chuck, but I think we write the plays we want to see, and I want to be entertained by language when I'm in the theater, but I also just want to be surprised. I want the thing to happen that I thought there's no way she could have done there. There's no way that could have been what happened to here and there. And I think I believe your audiences will see that fiction is filled with. I've talked, you and I have now talked a lot about the setup of it, but I think once those diaries and journals are opened, and once the play opens, then it's a series of surprises await.
Mhm. But of course, they have to be surprises that are at least plausible based on what you've set up. Because I mean, this is one of the hallmarks of bad writing, which I've seen a lot of lately, is that they'll advance the plot or create a surprise that makes no sense. There's just something he threw in at you, the Deus ex
Agreed.
machina bit, right?
Agreed. I mean, surprise and inevitability. It's what Aristotle taught us, and it's hard to learn that thing that we go, I didn't see that coming, and that's exactly the right thing. That's the thing that has to happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, this also came if I'm remembering my own history right, I had just finished a couple. I've done very few little capers in film and television, but I was doing a couple of them for a buddy around in the early 2000s, and I remember as some of that wound down, and I left the show I was working on. I was hungry to write theater language again. I was hungry to write theater dialogue. I'd been typing, scripts for Warner Brothers and ABC and stuff, and it wasn't that I was terribly good at it, but it was just I was hungry to write the language that we get to employ, as hard as it is in the theater. And I remember, I do have a memory of writing what audiences will see is the very first scene of this play, of this couple meeting at a cafe in Paris. It's just I just remember writing that scene in one full block. And as much as I'm an obsessive reviser, I have a feeling that one scene that just had filled up in me for so long is probably not unlike the very first draft that I wrote 20-some years ago.
You just raised another really good point that I don't think people are aware of enough, is that writing for the stage is different from writing for the screen, and sometimes people don't seem to understand this. I think theatrical writing, if it's done well, is richer, and less like natural speech.
Well, it better be. I mean, I don't want to go to the theater and hear people who talk like I do.
Exactly.
I want a theater of eloquence, and sometimes that eloquence doesn't mean fancy words. It's it's what's called parking lot wit, right? Like in your life, you don't have that perfect comeback to someone. You get out to your car and you go, "Oh, dang, this is what I should have said." In the theater, we're granted the opportunity to just have that comeback. Grant that character that comeback, and then a turn, and then the next thing, and that level of I want that. It's one of the greatest misnomers that in a standard play people use, like realistic dialogue.
Right.
No one on earth should go out and pay their good money to hear some people talk like they do in real life. We're a conjuring medium, we're not a depiction medium. We're not depicting how people talk. We're conjuring what if ideas, motion, language, status showed up in our language. And yes, it's approachable in the same way you said with the surprises. Yes, they're rooted in something. But we don't, I dare you to remember the plot of The Tempest, really, but we remember we are such stuff as dreams are made on.
Yeah.
He was a telephone man who fell in love with long distance from Tennessee Williams, instead of saying he worked for the phone company.
Right. Yes,
and
yes.
Languages, I suspect, I don't know, you're an actor, you know this too, that fascination, and it's a challenge, but it's kept me doing it for a good long time now.
Yeah. Well, once again, this is going to be October 7 through 23 at the Gaslight Theater, 2022. If you're watching this after the show is already closed, never fear, the Gaslight has other shows coming up in the future. You'll be able to go to their website down in the video description here. And I will also, Stephen, do you have a website that you want me to put in there of yours too?
I don't. I think you are my website now. I think you're my portal, Chuck. Although I do want to just quickly say thank you to the Gaslight and William and everybody there. I'm delighted that they found this play, and I've always loved my time in St. Louis. Good luck to the Cardinals fans. I'm hoping my Seattle Mariners make the playoffs, and we see you in the World Series.
Yeah. Okay, well, very good. So as I said, I've been talking to Stephen Dietz here. Stephen, thanks so much for taking some time to talk to me. I know this was sort of set up at the last minute on both our ends.
Worked out great.
Signing off then, this time for Chuck's Culture Channel. Tune in next time. This is Chuck Lavazzi with KDHX. See you the next time around.